Okay, in this section we're going to be learning about half angle identities. So what you see here are these half angle identities, so you'll need to write these down. These are not identities that you will have to memorize. One thing I want to point out to you is on the half angle identity for tangent, you do have a choice of either one of these. So it's not use both of them. You just choose, do I use this one or do I use this one? And most of the time it doesn't matter which one at all that you use. Okay, the first problem we're going to get started with. Alright, so you're told that sine of angle A is equal to -3/5 and angle A is in quadrant 3, and you're asked to get the half angle for sine, secant, and for tangent. So this is getting started is similar to something we had done before. You need to find sine, cosine, and tangent for angle A. So in order to do that, we've got to identify x, y, and r in order to find those values. So since you're given sine, that means that you know y over r. So my x value is what we'll have to determine. Y is going to be equal to -3, and r is going to be equal to +5. Now this is one of your triples. This is your 3, 4, 5 triple. So this will either be a +4 or a -4. But if you're in quadrant 3, then your x value is going to be negative. So x would need to be equal to -4. Okay, so from this, of course, I'm already given my sine value, but cosine of angle A, of course, cosine is x over r, so that's -4/5, and tangent of angle A is going to be equal to y over x, so that'd be a -3 over a -4, which is going to give me a +3/4. Okay, so now just go into your identities. So first of all, we have sine of A divided by 2. Now it starts off with a choice of plus or minus, which I'll explain that part in just a minute, so I'm just going to leave a little bit of a space there where I can come back and make that decision. Alright, underneath the radical you have 1 minus cosine A. Now we have found that cosine is -4/5. Of course, since this would be minus and negative, I'm going to go ahead and change that to plus. And then this will be divided by 2. Now, what you have to do to determine the plus minus. You're told that angle A is in quadrant 3. Let me just work this up here. Quadrant 3 goes from 180 degrees to 270. That's where angle A is located. So half of that, so that just means A divided by 2, but if you divide the A by 2, then you have to divide each of these values by 2. So this would be 90 degrees to 135 degrees. This describes quadrant 2. Okay? Now, you're doing the half angle over here. So what is sine in the second quadrant? So you need to know the location of the half angle, not just the angle. So the half angle is quadrant 2, and sine's going to be positive in quadrant 2. So all we've got left to do is just simplify this. So I'm going to go through and multiply each of these terms by 5. Which would then give me the square root of 9/10. Square root of 9 is 3. And then you just have to leave the 10 underneath the value. So that would be your half angle for sine. Alright, so cosine will work very similar to this. Okay, so your formula there underneath your radical is 1 plus cosine. So that would, since cosine is a -4/5, you're adding a negative, so that would just be the same thing as subtraction. Alright, so we've already figured out that the half angle is in quadrant 2, but this time we're doing cosine, and cosine is going to be negative in quadrant 2. Okay, so just like a while ago, I'm going to go through and just multiply all my terms by 5. So the 5 minus 4 gives me 1, so I end up with negative 1 over square root 10. And last is the half angle for tangent. Now your formula, again, for half angle for tangent, remember I told you you could choose whichever one you wanted to. I'm just going to use the first one. You don't have to make a decision there whether it needs to be positive or negative. That part's actually just kind of all worked out in its formula. So we have 1 minus cosine. So again, since cosine's negative, I'm going to change that to a plus. And then my denominator is sine A. So sine was the negative 3/5. So again, what I could do is go through and multiply all of my terms by 5. So I would have 9 divided by negative 3, which is negative 3. Now, I ended up finding tangent up here, and I just wasn't thinking at the time. We really didn't have to have this value at all. We only had to have sine and cosine based on our formulas.